The year is 740 BC, and the stone floor of the temple in Jerusalem is trembling beneath a man's feet. Most people assume it means moral perfection. They think it means flawless behavior, a sterile absence of sin, a terrifying standard of moral purity across the centuries. Back to the smoke-filled throne room of Isaiah, to the six-winged creatures burning in the presence of the king, because those creatures do not just scream the word Kadosh, they scream it 3 times. And the reason they do holds the key to the entire biblical cosmos. Trace the ink across the ancient scrolls, and you find a grammatical puzzle. In English, when we want to elevate a concept, we change the endings of our words. We take a base word like deep. We add a suffix to make it deeper. We add another to make it deepest. We build a staircase of intensity with our syllables, climbing higher toward the ultimate version of a thing. Ancient Hebrew does not work that way. The language of the prophets has no built-in comparative or superlative suffixes. A scribe pressing a reed pen into rough parchment cannot simply add a letter to make something the most of its kind. So, to elevate a word, they duplicate it. When Genesis chapter 14 describes a valley full of tar pits, the text literally says, "It was pit of tar." When the prophet Isaiah describes a mind kept in perfect peace, the Hebrew reads, "Shalom, shalom." The duplication acts as a grammatical highlighter. It forces the reader to stop and feel the weight of the noun that demands you wash your hands, clean up your life, and never make a mistake. We treat it as a synonym for being exceptionally good. But to elevate a concept to the absolute highest tier of reality, they triplicate it 3 times. The linguistic ceiling, the absolute maximum weight the language can hold before the grammar simply breaks. There is only one attribute of God in the entire biblical library that is elevated to the 3rd degree. The seraphim do not cry. Love, love, love. They do not scream. Mercy, mercy, mercy. They do not declare. Wrath, wrath, wrath. They scream. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. The repetition is not a musical chorus. It is a structural crown. If Kadosh means severed, then triple Kadosh means infinitely severed. It means God is the most distinct, unapproachable, alien reality in the cosmos. He is the source code of existence, burning at a frequency that should vaporize anything common that comes near it, a distance so vast you cannot bridge it with 1,000 lifetimes of flawless behavior. The gap is not a crack in the pavement. It is a canyon between galaxies. That grammatical rule explains the terror of Isaiah in the smoke-filled room. It explains the trembling of the fisherman dropping to his knees in the slime of a wooden boat. It explains the thick, heavy curtain woven from blue and scarlet thread hanging in the center of Jerusalem, keeping the fire away from the fragile people. And because we treat it as a synonym for being good, we spend our entire lives exhausted, trying to climb a ladder of behavior. The separation is total. The boundary is absolute. But the story of the Bible is not a story of the gap remaining forever. Because 33 years after that morning on the fishing boat, the earth in Jerusalem begins to shake again. The sky over Jerusalem turns completely black in the middle of the afternoon. A rabbi from Nazareth hangs pinned to rough Roman wood, his lungs slowly collapsing, as he pulls himself up by his wounded wrists to exhale for the final time. And the exact moment his heart stops, a violent earthquake rocks the city, fracturing solid limestone and shaking the foundations of the temple complex sitting on the eastern hill. Inside the holy place, something impossible happens to the architecture of separation. The massive, heavy veil woven from fine twined linen, the thickness of a man's handspan, the physical firewall designed to keep the lethal, radiating heat of God's raw presence safely contained, rips completely in half. It does not tear from the bottom up. As if a group of panicked priests had taken iron knives to the fabric in a moment of theological rebellion. It tears from the top down. It is a violent, deliberate act, initiated from the inside of the dark room. Imagine the absolute terror of the priests ministering in the temple at that exact moment. They are tending the golden lampstand, burning the crushed frankincense, meticulously following every hazard containment rule written in the ancient Levitical scrolls. Suddenly, the earth violently shudders to reach a God we think is simply a better, cleaner version of ourselves. And the word does carry the weight of purity. The massive fabric above their heads screams as it rips like dry paper. They must have instinctively hit the stone floor, covering their faces, bracing for the lethal radiation of the back room to vaporize them on the spot, just as it had consumed the men in the wilderness. But the fire does not destroy them. The pitch-black darkness of the Holy of Holies is suddenly exposed to the light of the courtyard, and nobody dies. The containment protocol is over. For centuries, the entire religious system was built on keeping the Kadosh strictly away from the common dirt of humanity, protecting fragile people from the blinding, nuclear reality of the severed God. But when the carpenter dies on the cross, the direction of holiness completely reverses. The tearing of the veil is not the destruction of the sacred. It is the invasion of the common. God is no longer remaining severed. In the back room of a stone building, waiting for you to scrub your hands in cold water and offer enough blood to carefully approach him once a year. The utterly other, the alien reality of the Creator, is bleeding out into the dusty streets, the rented rooms, and the broken lives of ordinary people. Under the old system, if something holy touched something common, the common thing was instantly destroyed. But under the new covenant, when the holy touches the common thing is instantly made clean. The unconsuming fire that burned in the desert bush is now rushing out. But if you look closer at the ancient language echoing in that smoke-filled room, at the physical architecture God demands in the desert, of the temple to take up residence inside the human chest, you do not have to climb a ladder of flawless behavior to reach the Kadosh. The Kadosh has shattered the architecture of separation to reach you. But if that is true, why do so many of us still feel like we are standing on the wrong side of the curtain? You wake up in the dark. You stare at the ceiling. Your chest feels tight. You recount yesterday's failures, the harsh words you spoke, the quiet promises you broke, the silent resentments you harbored. You feel the heavy, familiar weight of your own inadequacy pressing down on your ribs. You feel entirely common. You feel dirty. So you build your own veil. You stitch it together in your mind, thread by thread, apology by apology. You create a massive mental barrier between yourself and God. You assume He is standing behind a thick curtain of moral perfection, arms crossed, waiting for you to scrub your hands, waiting for you to get your life together, waiting for you to stop acting like a fragile, combustible human being. You read your Bible. You try to pray. You try to break the habit. You fail. You promise to do better tomorrow. The cycle repeats. The exhaustion deepens. We live completely exhausted. We carry a phantom burden. The temple in Jerusalem is empty. At why those burning creatures repeat the word exactly 3 times, you start to see something the moral perfection reading completely misses. But we are still hauling animals to the altar. The heavy fabric is ripped in half. But we are still standing in the courtyard, afraid to look up. But maybe the part that stays with me most is not the torn curtain. It is the bronze shovels. Think about the clay basins, the iron tongs, the tools covered in ash and dirt and blood in the ancient courtyard. Common tools, made from dirt and metal, beaten into shape by human hands, used every day in the brutal heat and the blinding smoke. And yet, the ancient text explicitly calls them Kadosh. They did not earn their title. They did not achieve a state of moral perfection. They were simply severed from the world and placed in the hands of the priest. Holiness is not a ladder of moral perfection you climb. It is the sheer, terrifying gravity of the God who holds you. If you are in a season where you feel completely disqualified by your own humanity, you need to stop staring at your own dirt. You are measuring the wrong gap. You are treating the creator of the cosmos like a frustrated manager holding a disciplinary ledger. You are trying to behave your way across a canyon between galaxies. He is the unconsuming fire. He is the severed one. And he has violently crossed the gap you could never bridge. The torn veil is not a demand for better behavior. It is a declaration of contact. Holy is not a behavioral standard you are expected to reach. It is a category of existence you are entirely outside of. He does not ask you to become a burning star. He asks you to stand still while the fire enters your rented room, your broken marriage, your quiet despair. But what does it actually look like when that alien reality fully rewrites the human story? Look back at the heavy wooden doors of the temple in Jerusalem. The smoke from the altar clears. The earth stops shaking, and the massive. The thick fabric of the veil lies completely torn on the stone floor. The lethal, radiant heat has left the building. God speaks from a burning bush in the desert, and a runaway shepherd is not consumed. A mobile temple is built in the dust, and the unapproachable fire lives among fragile tents. A prophet stands in a trembling throne room, and a burning coal cleanses his lips instead of destroying him. A fisherman drops to his knees in a sinking boat, and the carpenter tells him to stand up. A heavy veil tears violently from top to bottom, and the back room of the cosmos is laid wide open. The utterly severed God steps out of the dark, and the common dirt of humanity is washed clean. And ordinary bronze shovels are placed in the courtyard, and they become sacred simply by being held. Same word, same God. The real question of Isaiah's vision isn't, how do we become good enough? It is this, how does something entirely common survive contact? But here's the part I keep coming back to. The third degree of that ancient word echoing in the smoke. Kadosh. 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 We spent our whole lives thinking it was a measuring stick for our own moral exhaustion. But the terrifying beauty of the superlative is that God's holiness is not a behavioral standard he demands you achieve. It is the very reason he can step into your mess without being tainted by it. If you are in a season where you feel too dirty to pray, too broken to be useful, and too common to be anywhere near the divine, you need to stop staring at your own hands. You are a clay pot. He is the potter. The vessel does not make itself sacred by behaving flawlessly. It becomes Kadosh the exact moment it is picked up by the Creator. If this shifted something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted by trying to be perfect. Pray for us as we keep digging into these ancient texts. And may the God, who tore the veil in half-step right into the middle of your completely common life and make you holy simply by refusing to let you go, with something completely other, to feel the absolute terror of that question. You cannot start in the smoke of the temple. You have to step backward into the dust of a wilderness, where a runaway shepherd is staring at a bush that is on fire, but refuses to burn. Smoke thickens the air, smelling of burning cedar and crushed frankincense. So dense, it stings the eyes and coats the back of the throat. That unconsuming fire in the desert reveals the exact problem with our modern vocabulary. We are a culture completely exhausted by the relentless demand for self-improvement. We treat holiness like a spiritual credit score, assuming that if we accrue enough positive points, volunteer enough hours, and avoid enough specific vices, we can finally walk into the presence of God without flinching. You feel it in the ticking clock of your own internal expectations, in the cold sweat of measuring your daily failures, in the heavy, invisible backpack of trying to be a slightly better person today than you were yesterday. We have taken the vast, terrifying concept of the divine and shrunk it down into a manageable metric of human morality. We think of God as the ultimate moral auditor. We picture him holding a clipboard in a sterile, fluorescent lit room, checking boxes of good behavior and marking demerits for every misstep. And because we view him this way, we spend our lives scrubbing our hands in hot water until the skin turns red, trying to wash off the grit of our own humanity, hoping we can finally get clean enough to be accepted. When we read the scriptures through this lens of modern anxiety, we inevitably distort the entire architecture of the text. We assume the word holy simply means sinless. A prophet named Isaiah stands alone in the courtyard. His king, Uzziah, has just died after 52 years on the throne, leaving the nation vulnerable, fracturing, and afraid. We imagine a realm entirely devoid of mistakes, a behavioral perfection that we might eventually achieve if we just try hard enough, pray long enough, and police our own thoughts with enough vigilance. But this endless moral exhaustion is not a pursuit of the divine. It is the worship of an idealized mirror. If God is simply a perfectly moral version of a human being, he is not terrifying. He is just intimidating. An intimidating figure makes you want to straighten your posture, tie your shoes tighter, and work harder to earn their approval. But a truly incomprehensible presence makes you realize that your entire framework of approval is entirely irrelevant. The fundamental gap between humanity and the Creator is not a gap of behavior that can be bridged by trying harder. It is a massive, uncrossable gap of being. A clay pot cannot become the potter simply by holding water flawlessly. The ancient mind understood this categorical distinction perfectly. They did not experience the divine as a behavioral standard to be achieved, but as a radiating, physical reality that had to be carefully managed. To the ancient Israelites, the presence of God was not a moral concept to be debated in a classroom. It was like a naked nuclear reactor core, unimaginably powerful. But Isaiah is not looking at an empty earthly throne. He is looking up. He sees a king whose robe is so massive it spills over the thresholds, the absolute source of all life and energy, but instantly fatal if approached without the proper shielding. You do not approach a burning star by promising to be a good person. You approach it with absolute awe, profound terror, and highly specific boundaries. And to understand how they managed that terrifying, radiant heat, you have to look at the physical blueprint they carried with them through the sand. Look at the base of Mount Sinai. Men and women are building a mobile temple. They spin goat hair into yarn. They hammer bronze mirrors into washing basins. They stretch red-dyed rams' skins across heavy acacia wood frames. The desert wind kicks up sand, but the structure rising in the dust is obsessed with exact, uncompromising precision. It is an architecture of absolute separation. They build a massive outer courtyard. The common people can stand here. They build a closed tent inside the courtyard. Only the priests can walk here. They build a tiny, pitch-black room at the very back. Only one man can enter here, one day a year, shrouded in a thick cloud of incense, carrying the blood of a goat. Between the priest's room and that final, terrifying, back room hangs a veil. It is woven from fine twined linen, blue, purple, scarlet, and fills the entire architectural space. He sees 6-winged seraphim, creatures burning like live coals, covering their faces and their feet to shield themselves. It is the thickness of a man's handspan. It is so heavy it takes a team of priests just to drag it into place. The veil is not a curtain. It is a quarantine. It is a physical firewall. It is designed to protect fragile, combustible humanity from the lethal, radiating heat of God's raw presence. Everything in this camp is categorized by its proximity to that back room. The closer you get, the more dangerous it becomes. Priests scrub their hands and feet in cold water before stepping near the altar. They smear blood on their right earlobe, their right thumb, their right big toe. The smell of roasting meat and burning fat rises constantly into the sky. Outside the camp, inside the camp, inside the court, inside the tent, inside the veil, boundaries, borders, limits. A man named Uzzah touches the Ark of the Covenant to steady it on a wooden cart. He drops dead instantly. 2 priests, Nadab and Abihu, offer unauthorized fire on the altar. They are consumed on the spot. This is not a display of divine temper tantrums. It is cosmic physics. You do not touch a high-voltage power line with bare hands and blame the electricity for your death. The entire Levitical system is a hazard containment protocol. It is a way for a holy God to live in the middle of a common people. from the blinding center of the room. They are screaming a single word back and forth to each other with enough kinetic force, without destroying them. But why? Why this violent physical necessity for distance? The answer is not found in the sacrificial rules themselves. The answer is hiding inside the name they gave to that final, terrifying room. Inside the exact Hebrew word, those burning creatures were screaming in Isaiah's vision. The ink on the parchment of Isaiah chapter 6, verse 3, records a sound that shakes stone pillars. The seraphim are not screaming about God's flawless moral record. They are declaring his fundamental, terrifying nature. The word translated into English as holy is the Hebrew Kadosh. It appears hundreds of times in the ancient texts, and its primary definition has nothing to do with being well-behaved. The adjective Kadosh comes from the root verb Kadosh, and before it ever carried any moral weight, it was a word of physical, violent action. It means to cut, to sever, to slice something completely away from the common pile and set it apart for a singular use. If realizing the original language changes, the entire weight of the text is shifting how you see the divine. You're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into these ancient words than you knew was possible, to shake the heavy wooden doorposts entirely off their hinges. Holy, holy. You hear that word every Sunday. So the biblical writers apply this concept of cutting to physical objects before they ever apply it to human morality. When God finishes creating the physical universe in Genesis chapter 2, he looks at the seventh day and he declares it Kadosh. He does not make the day morally pure, because a unit of time cannot commit a sin. He cuts it out from the other 6 days. He severs it from ordinary labor. In the tabernacle courtyard, the priests use bronze shovels, iron tongs, and clay basins that the text explicitly calls Kadosh. A bronze shovel cannot be a good person. A shovel cannot have pure thoughts. But a shovel can be completely severed from ordinary use. That root changes everything. When the burning creatures scream Kadosh in the temple, they are not saying God is very good. They are screaming that he is severed from the created order. He is entirely other, unbound by time, uncontained by space, and wholly distinct from anything your hands have ever touched. Kadosh is not a behavioral standard you achieve. It is a category of existence you do not belong to. It is the blinding, alien difference between the painter and the canvas. It is stitched onto velvet church banners, stamped in gold foil on the spine of your Bible, and sung in almost every modern worship chorus. Between the potter and the clay, and the massive veil in the temple was designed to keep that alien reality safely contained. But what happens when that utter distinction steps out of the back room and walks onto a wet, wooden fishing boat? The water of the Sea of Galilee slaps against the hull of a wooden boat. The sun is barely rising, and the men are exhausted. Their muscles burn from pulling waterlogged ropes through the dark for hours. The nets are completely empty. The morning air smells of wet wood, sweat, and failure. A carpenter from Nazareth sits in the stern. He tells an experienced fisherman named Simon to push out into the deep water and drop the nets one more time. Simon argues, but he drops the heavy linen ropes over the side, and the physical laws of the lake shatter. The ropes pull taut, burning the skin on the men's hands. The water churns white. Silver scales flash violently beneath the surface as the thick cords begin to rip apart under the weight of an impossible catch. The boat tilts. The wooden ribs groan under the sudden pressure. Another boat rows out to help, and soon, both vessels are riding so low in the dark water they are seconds away from sinking under the sheer mass of the fish. This is not an economic blessing. It is a terrifying rupture of the natural order. Watch what Simon Peter does. He does not celebrate the catch. And if you ask the average person sitting in those pews what it means, they would almost all give you the exact same definition. He does not count the money he will make at the market. He does not thank the rabbi for the sudden wealth. He wades through a mountain of suffocating fish, drops to his knees in the slime and the seawater, and looks up at the carpenter. "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man." "O Lord." Why? Why is his immediate reaction to a miracle absolute? Groveling terror. Because Simon realizes he is not sitting next to a good teacher. He realizes the firewall has been breached. The distance has been collapsed. The massive, radiating power of the back room of the temple is sitting on the wet wooden bench of his fishing boat. He feels the uncrossable gap of being. He knows that combustible humanity cannot survive contact with the Kadosh. He expects to die. He expects the same instant. Lethal reaction that consumed Uzzah when he touched the ark. Or Nadab when he brought unauthorized fire into the tabernacle. The holy is in his boat. And Simon knows he is entirely, hopelessly common. His plea is not a confession. It is a survival reflex. But the carpenter does not consume him. The carpenter does not leave. He tells the trembling fisherman not to be afraid. Simon survives the encounter. He survives the presence of the severed, the distinct, the utterly other. But the terror of that morning on the lake points backward.